What if one of the most iconic comedies in film history was based on a movie you've never heard of? Fact 1.
Nervous?
Yes.
First time.
No, I've been nervous lots of times.
Most fans think Airplane is just a general spoof of disaster films. But it's actually a near shot-for-shot parody of a single movie, 0 Hour, from 1957. The directors Jim Abrahams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker literally bought the rights to it. They used the exact plot, the same character names, and even some lines word for word. Ted Stryker, the troubled pilot in Airplane. He's Ted Stryker in 0 Hour. The dramatic food poisoning plot? That's from 0 Hour, too. Even the "we have to find someone who can fly this plane" line is lifted directly. The trio stumbled upon 0 Hour, late at night on TV. They couldn't believe how melodramatic it was. So they rewrote it as a comedy, keeping the structure completely intact. They weren't mocking just the genre. They were mocking that movie. Most viewers had no idea. It made the comedy even funnier because it played everything so straight. The serious tone made the absurd jokes land even harder. That's why Leslie Nielsen's deadpan delivery works so well. He's not acting in a spoof. He's acting like he's in 0 Hour. Even the cockpit scenes are visually similar. They intentionally mirrored the blocking and camera angles. The result is a comedy that feels oddly grounded. It's secretly a remake disguised as a parody. And it may be the only comedy that gets funnier once you watch the original. Few movies are this bold in borrowing so directly. But Airplane did it, and made history in the process. The genius is that they didn't parody a genre. They parodied a blueprint. And somehow, that made the entire film feel more original. Even the smallest moments, like the food options or cockpit dialogue, come directly from 0 Hour, without change. It's not a spoof built on tropes. It's a spoof built on replication. Fact 2.
There's no reason to panic. But the other two pilots are just fine. They're at the controls flying the plane.
Leslie Nielsen didn't start his career in comedy. He was known as a serious, dramatic actor. For decades, he played cops, doctors, and generals. So when the Airplane, directors cast him, it wasn't for laughs. It was for his straight face. They wanted someone who wouldn't try to be funny. Someone who would say absurd lines with complete sincerity. And Nielsen delivered. When he said, "I am serious, and don't call me Shirley," he didn't crack a smile. That was the magic. He played it like Shakespeare. And audiences roared. The directors later said that Nielsen didn't know he was funny, and that's why he was. He wasn't telling jokes. He was reacting to insanity around him. That's why his performance became iconic. It sparked a second career for him in comedy. He went on to star in The Naked Gun, Police Squad, and countless parodies. He became a legend of deadpan delivery. But Airplane was the beginning. If they'd cast a known comedian, it wouldn't have worked. They needed someone who could keep a straight face while the world collapsed. And Nielsen was perfect. His seriousness became the punchline. And it redefined what comedy acting could be. The directors said they weren't looking for jokes. They were looking for conviction. And Nielsen gave them that, without even trying to be funny. He wasn't performing comedy. He was anchoring madness. That anchoring made every ridiculous moment around him twice as hilarious. Fact 3.
Huh? LA departure frequency 123.9er. Huh?
NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar plays co-pilot Roger Murdoch in the film. It's one of the most unexpected cameos in movie history. But he didn't take the role just for fun. He wanted to buy an expensive Oriental rug. And the paycheck from Airplane would cover it. Seriously, that's what convinced him. The filmmakers were shocked he said yes. But Kareem had done some acting before. He played a role in Bruce Lee's Game of Death. Still, comedy was a new arena. He didn't understand most of the script, but he followed directions and nailed the tone. His deadpan frustration with the kid in the cockpit became a fan favorite. Especially the line, "Tell your old man to drag Walton and Lanier up and down the court for 48 minutes." That was based on real-life criticism he'd received. The joke was layered, personal, and unexpected. Kareem even wore his Lakers goggles under the uniform. Fans couldn't believe it was really him, and he almost didn't agree to the part. until they offered him $30,000. Just enough for that rug. The cameo became legendary, and it proved that even an NBA MVP can steal a scene in a disaster spoof. He later joked that people remembered him more for Airplane than for basketball. His role added a surreal, self-aware layer to the film's already unhinged tone. It was one of the first true athlete-as-himself gags in film comedy, and it set the stage for future athletes stepping into parody roles. Fact 4.
Captain over, white courtesy phone. Captain Clarence over.
Peter Graves, who played Captain Over, almost walked away. He was a respected actor known for Mission Impossible. When he first read the Airplane script, he thought it was disgusting. He said, "This is the most tasteless thing I've ever seen." He especially hated the adult jokes involving his character and the young boy. He didn't understand the humor. He felt it crossed lines. But the directors begged him to reconsider. They told him to play it completely straight, to pretend it was Mission Impossible with turbulence. Eventually, he agreed, and his discomfort actually helped the performance. The awkwardness in his scenes made them even funnier, especially when he delivers outrageous lines without blinking. Graves later said he was shocked by the audience response. People couldn't stop laughing. The role revived his career in a totally new direction. He embraced the comedy world afterward. But it all started with a script he almost threw in the trash. Sometimes the riskiest roles become the most iconic. Graves proved that leaning into the uncomfortable can be magic, even if you start out thinking it's a huge mistake. He went from spy to punchline, and fans loved every second of it. It's ironic that his most famous role came from something he almost refused, but that reluctance actually helped the performance feel more believable. The tension he felt reading the lines is the same tension you feel watching them, and that's exactly what made it so funny. Fact 5.
Stryker, before we start, I'd like to say something.
What kind of weather you in up there?
Rain.
One of the most unforgettable scenes in Airplane features two passengers speaking Jive. It's a parody of 1970s blaxploitation film dialogue, but the writers didn't fake the lingo. They hired two real-life DJs from Los Angeles, Norman Alexander Gibbs and Al White. The two actors rewrote their own lines. They crafted the dialogue to sound authentic. They knew the rhythm, slang, and cadence. The directors trusted them to make it work. And they nailed it. The result was a hilarious yet respectful homage. Even the older lady who translates their conversation was in on the joke. She learned all her lines phonetically and had no idea what she was saying. That made it even funnier. The scene works because everyone commits 100%. There's no mocking, only exaggeration. The Jive actors said they loved the chance to showcase their culture in such a wild setting. They took pride in the accuracy. It wasn't just a joke. It was a mini masterclass in comedic timing. It's still quoted today. And it's a reminder that sometimes authenticity makes the punchline even stronger. The actors who wrote their lines made sure it wasn't just a stereotype. It was style. The rhythm and cadence weren't accidental. They were curated. That attention to real language gave the scene surprising weight beneath the laughs. It remains one of the most quoted and dissected parts of the film. And it wouldn't have worked without the performer's creative control. Fact 6. Most films have one director, maybe two, but Airplane had three. Jim Abrahams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker shared directing duties equally. They had worked together for years on stage and short films, but this was their first feature. The studio didn't love the idea. They worried three directors would lead to chaos, but the trio had a system. They'd rehearse scenes together, then pick one person to handle the actors on set. They rotated that role daily. The result was shockingly smooth. Their unified vision came from years of collaboration. They even edited together, sitting side by side. They were like a three-headed director. Most of the film's precise tone and rhythm came from their shared instincts. Every shot, every joke, every cut was a group decision. They trusted each other completely. They'd often vote on a gag. 2 votes meant it stayed. 1 vote meant it was cut. That democracy gave the film balance. Not one joke feels like it comes from a different movie. It's consistent because it's cohesive. and it launched the Zaz team into comedy legend. Together, they helped invent the modern spoof. And somehow, 3 directors made one perfect film. It was a rare case of creative ego being replaced by total trust. The Zaz team didn't argue over direction. They shared it instinctively. They once said, "If one of us laughed, it stayed." That kind of creative shorthand is almost impossible to replicate. Fact 7. Julie Hagerty played Elaine, the flight attendant and Ted's ex-girlfriend. Her soft-spoken, dazed delivery became one of the film's highlights. But her audition almost didn't happen. She wasn't a big name at the time. In fact, she came from stage work, not film. When she walked in, the directors weren't sure, but she read her lines with total seriousness. No winking, no trying to be funny. She just was. Her natural rhythm made everything funnier. Even when she said something simple, like, "There is no reason to become alarmed," it landed. She had that rare comedic gift, not knowing why it was funny. And that's exactly what the directors wanted. They cast her almost immediately. But even after filming, she wasn't sure it would work. She thought the film might flop. She thought her performance was too strange. Then the reviews came in and praised her timing. Audiences loved her. She became the prototype for the deadpan comedy heroine. And she later reprised the tone in films like Lost in America. Her soft chaos in Airplane became unforgettable. And it all started with an audition nobody expected to work. And that's exactly what they needed for Elaine. She was a walking contradiction, soothing and panicked, calm and chaotic. Her natural oddness made her more believable in an unbelievable world, and it helped the love story feel just grounded enough. Fact 8.
Excuse me, I thought you might like some coffee. Oh, that's very nice of you, thank you. Cream? No, thank you, I take it black, like my man.
Paramount didn't believe Airplane would succeed. They thought the jokes were too strange, the tone too weird, the cast too unknown. They greenlit it mostly because it was cheap. The budget was just $3.5 million. That's pennies by Hollywood standards. Executives even considered releasing it straight to TV. They didn't think audiences would get the humor. They were used to sitcoms, not absurdist comedy. Test screenings changed everything. People laughed until they cried. The studio was stunned. Word of mouth spread fast. Suddenly, Paramount had a hit on their hands. They ramped up promotion at the last second. And when it hit theaters, it exploded. Critics raved. Audiences came back multiple times. It made over $150 million. One of the most profitable comedies ever. From unwanted experiment to goldmine. The studio execs admitted they were wrong, and Zaz proved them very, very wrong. Executives later claimed they always believed in the project, but that wasn't true. The marketing budget only came after the first test screening blew up. They were ready to bury it until the laughs became undeniable. What they dismissed as a TV-level comedy became a pop culture event, and it embarrassed every executive who passed on it. Fact 9.
What kind of plane is it?
Oh, it's a big, pretty white plane with red stripe, curtains in the window, and wheels, and it looks like a big Tylenol.
Steven Stucker played Johnny, the eccentric air traffic controller. He wasn't in the original script. His character was added later. And every single line he delivered was improvised. The actor was known for his wild energy. He refused to play it straight. The directors gave him permission to do his own thing, and he ran with it. Lines like "Me John, Big Tree" and "I can make a hat or a brooch or a pterodactyl" were all his. None of it was planned. None of it was rehearsed. The crew had trouble keeping straight faces. He became a cult favorite. His scenes feel like a movie within a movie. Zaz said they let him go wild because it worked. He was a comic force of nature. The character has no logic, no rules. But that's the brilliance of it. Johnny breaks the film's reality and makes it better. Stucker's performance became iconic, and no one has ever quite matched it. He brought chaos to a film already overflowing with madness. The filmmakers never gave him a script, just permission. He'd improvise wildly, and they'd keep whatever worked. He was like a one-man alternate universe inside the film. Every time he appears, it feels like the movie pauses just for him. And somehow, That makes his scenes unforgettable. Fact 10. Before Airplane, most comedies followed traditional storylines. Characters had arcs, plots unfolded logically, and jokes were built around setups and payoffs. Airplane broke all of that. It turned every second into a punchline. Visual gags, puns, background jokes. It was non-stop. Some jokes only lasted half a second. Others were buried in scenery. It rewarded rewatching like no other comedy. People would discover new jokes each time. The film didn't care about realism. It cared about pace and laughter. Lots of it. The success of Airplane opened the doors for dozens of spoofs. From The Naked Gun to Scary Movie, it redefined parody. Critics called it the Citizen Kane of spoofs. Its influence still echoes today. Writers cite it as a masterclass in structure and timing. And without it, modern absurdist humor might not even exist. It didn't just change comedy, it detonated it. Comedies stopped trying to be clever and started trying to be relentless. It redefined what a punchline could be: visual, verbal, or both at once. Writers started thinking in rapid-fire setups, not slow burns. Even today's meme-style humor owes something to its pacing, and that legacy still echoes through every laugh-out-loud moment in modern film. Bonus fact. Believe it or not, Airplane almost had a totally different name. During production, the working title wasn't funny at all. It was Flying High. That's right, the most iconic spoof of all time was nearly stuck with a generic title. And in some countries, like Australia and New Zealand, it actually was released under that name. The filmmakers hated it. They felt Flying High sounded like a made-for-TV drama. It didn't capture the absurdity of the film. It didn't have the punch. It didn't scream parody. But the studio worried that Airplane was too simple, too weird, too short. They were afraid audiences wouldn't know it was a comedy. So the ZAZ team pushed back hard. They insisted that the plainness of Airplane was the joke. It set the tone before the movie even started. And it worked. The exclamation point was even debated. But in the end, they added it for energy. Not a title, an announcement. Today, Airplane is one of the most recognizable comedy titles in film history. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't have to. Because what comes next is unforgettable. If it had been called Flying High, it might have vanished like other forgettable 80s comedies. But Airplane, that name landed perfectly, and it's still soaring over 40 years later.